This is E&P Reports, a vodcast from editor and publisher. Since 1884, the authoritative voice of news publishing. And this episode sponsored by IQ Audience Plus by Town News. Consumer revenue has never been more important. Digital leaders at media organizations worldwide understand the need to accelerate its growth now. Plus, traditional one-size-fits-all paywalls aren't the answer. They're blunt instruments that treat all visitors the same way. IQ Audience Plus is a smart, dynamic metering solution that empowers media companies to maximize revenue by identifying key audiences, seeding engagement, and growing membership and subscriptions. Supercharge your consumer revenue, grow engagement, and bolster your advertising income now with IQ Audience Plus. Visit townnews.com EP today to learn more. And warm greetings once again. I'm Mike Blinder, publisher of E&P. If you are listening to E&P Reports on the many different podcast platforms we're on, please follow us. If you're watching the video version of E&P Reports on YouTube, there's a subscribe button under the screen, a bell to the right. If you click that, you'll get an update each and every time we upload a new episode of E&P Reports. The name Steve Mattingly may be familiar to you, especially if you're in the news publishing industry. For 30 plus years, he's been the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Southern Lithoplate, been on the board of directors of ING, and he's been a mover and a shaker in helping the operations sector, very important part of our industry, become as profitable and as efficient as possible. We wanted to chat with Steve about the operations world, and more importantly, his thoughts on where the print side of our industry is today, what challenges we have, and where it may be heading in the future. So let's talk operations with an expert, as I go one-on-one with this episode of E&P Reports with Steve Mattingly. There is my good friend, Stephen. Where do we have you today, sir? You're in your office in which city right now?
I'm in my office. We're located a little bit north of Wake Forest, North Carolina, the Raleigh-Durham area. The actual town is called Youngsville.
All right. Now, I've been told by those in that area that there are more PhDs per square inch in that area of the United States than any other spot in the world. Can you attest to that? When you go out and bump into someone, do they show off that they have a doctorate, or is that not true, sir?
Well, you asked two questions in one. Definitely the highest per capita PhD location in the world is the Raleigh-Durham Research Triangle area. So we have Duke, NC State, Carolina, Shaw University, and several other regional technical schools, all concentrated within a 30-minute drive of each other. I will say, though, that the community is really humble. Cary actually just won the safest and one of the best cities, mid-sized cities in the country to live. So we're in a great spot.
You are in a great spot. I also like your airport, too. It's very friendly. It's very warm. Well, Steve, we're here to talk about a sector of the industry that I don't know. I come from the business side. I was an ad guy for many, many years, radio, TV, then got into this publishing game. And I found it fascinating. I don't know. I know you've traveled far and wide. My entry into the newspaper world was the Portland, Maine Press Herald. Have you ever visited up there?
I've been to Portland, yes.
Yeah. And I was brought in to start their digital division. And I remember the tunnel under Main Street that went between the building where the editorial and the business office was and where the press was on the other side of the street. And those were the days. I mean, when I started visiting newspapers to consult them back in like 2000, there were still presses in the buildings. And I actually felt a rumble on a floor once. And I love that smell of the ink and watch. Yeah. You have been in this industry for 30 some odd years, and you've watched this world of operations change. And I think what I want to do is just spend some time with someone in that sector to talk about where we are today and where we're going. Okay. But did you see this coming? I have to say, you were at Southern Lithoplate. You've been there for 30 some odd years now, correct?
Yeah.
You've been far and wide all over the world because you helped make Southern Lithoplate from a small private company into one of the world leaders in the industry. I mean, one of the top 5 at least. And you were part of that growth. Did you see this coming when the digital world happened? That's my first question. Did you suddenly say, "Oh my God, the whole world's turning upside down," or was it a slow thing?
It wasn't super fast. Actually, my first encounter with newspapers was when I was 7 years old, and my dad was working for the Courier Journal and Louisville Times, the Bingham family.
Mm-hmm.
He gave me a quarter to go down and get a snack, and one of his coworkers took me down and showed me their new offset printing press. And then he walked over the street and showed me where the new gravure press was. So that's when I think I fell in love with newspapers. Was when I was 7. I met the Cassens as a consultant back in '88. And one of the things, Southern's grown into a beautiful company, and we are really blessed by how we have been able to grow over the past 30 years. That's a tribute to the Casson family, Tripp and Clark in particular. And I'm personally thankful for them because they basically cut me loose and let me run.
Right.
That doesn't happen much. But we started doing studies in 2005 and 2006 about where the world was going, CTP, right?
Mm-hmm.
Analog to CTP. And we saw how fast that market was going to transition. And then in 2020, AP Tech, which used to be the former NPES, National Printing Equipment Supply Association, I was on a research group with that group. And we did a study called The Future of Print 2020, the hindsight type of study that would prove true in 2020 that mobile and online was going to change the world. And it has. It's created a different type of access to the advertiser. It will not kill print, just like radio and TV did not, but it's definitely changing the mix.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, if there's no question that an insert in a newspaper works. To this day, research shows that people love those coupons. They love those deals. I mean, God forbid you should take the paper away from my wife before she pulls those out and organizes them. She's always been one of those, and people still steal them. I mean, they will go through neighborhoods and grab them because they have such value. But if you were the CEO of a Walgreens or a CFO of Walmart, you would try not to go through the expense of print and try to get your audience to use coupons on a phone. That's just a normal progression we're going through. Mm-hmm. But how about the consolidation of presses? I mean, there are still people who crave a print product, and a newspaper still delivers the news. Did you see, I mean, I don't know what the exact number is, but do you have any idea how many less presses there are in North America today than there was 5-8 years ago? Is there a study out on that right now?
Yeah, if you look, this is not a study as much as it is just market knowledge, if you will. If you go back about 15 years, there were well in excess of about 1,700 print sites in the United States and Canada. Now you're looking at several hundred key production sites and probably 700-800 total sites. And the consolidation, we had a wave of consolidation, if you will, about 10 years ago that continued at 10 to 20 to 30 shutdowns, closures, joint ventures a year. This year, I think it's going to create another wave. And then by 2024, 2025, we should be settled down to about 400 to 450 is our estimate. Key regional production centers owned by the likes of the Gannett's, which are major acquirers, if you will, but also incredibly strong regional groups like Russ Communications, Paxton Media Group, and independents that are major print players like the Villages in Florida.
Right. They just put together a brand new facility on 75. I just live an hour south of there.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And I thought it was fascinating that they're all in. One of my customers, when I was consulting years ago, was the Ogden Standard Examiner in Ogden, Utah. And I was there when they moved to that brand new, exciting print facility on the side of town. Some have made it. You're right. I mean, look at the Villages or look at others. But some put a lot of cash and investment into that and then thought that all that business would be there. You're still high on print, right? You still believe.
Very high. Very high.
Okay, tell us why. Why are you still a believer in the ink and the press and still maintaining that?
Well, there's a number I want to share with you because we can't not grapple with this number.
Okay.
I saw a study last week, Mike, where they said that in services in 2020, the year 2020, 5G accounted for about $1.6 billion. In
Right.
2026, the estimate's $450 billion. This move of 5G is going to create a different type of an advertising platform. But when I look at Leonard Woolsey down at Southern Newspapers, Jason Taylor over at Gannett, Jamie Paxton at Paxton Media, or Phil Markward Villages, and I look at how they're integrating mobile and print, there's a way for us to collaborate with technologies. Print and or newspapers in particular, newspaper journalists are still the single most trusted source of information. So I've got to find a way, like those companies I've mentioned have married print, events, good to great journalism and mobile technology and make them work in harmony with each other.
I agree with that. I actually say it's just another channel.
You're exactly right.
And you have to use it. Like at E&P, we do not ignore print. We use it just as another channel and still embrace it. So is it almost, okay, I got to ask you this. I mean, you've been doing this for generations and you're pretty darn smart. I mean, decades and pretty darn smart. Do you believe that some people are just throwing the baby out with the bathwater? And I don't want you to name names, but they just give it up so much or stop putting enough love into it that it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy? I'm
going to give you a big amen to that, because what people, I think, and this is indicative of maybe our generation, and I'm 62, getting ready to turn 63, and I think this generation is looking at the rapid emergence of the electronic technology, digital technology, mobile technology, and they're thinking it's going to replace print, and it's not. They're not thinking about how to make the two interactive. This is not like when I bought media in the early 80s and I would say, okay, I need so much radio, I need so much TV, I need so much direct mail, because they were really independent of each other. Mm-hmm. Print is no longer independent. It's interactive with QR codes and visual imagery and the quality that we can do with variable data and what we can do with color now. It's a fantastic marketplace product that delivers tactile and higher level responses than any other media.
It's true.
So what we have to do is we've got to step back and quit being blinded by the light of technology and start to actually look at how we collaborate with and or yoke with the different technologies to get the best messaging to the marketplace.
And it's still a great distribution method.
Definitely.
For the local advertiser.
Definitely.
No ifs, ands, or buts. But if you give up on your circulation, I'm just, I'm preaching to the choir, because you and I are both believers in going back to basics. So let's take if you were to, Steve, I'm waving a magic wand. Guess what? You now are in control of a medium market daily newspaper. It's hemorrhaging a bit, but it's holding its own. The brand still has some life. It just left, let's just say, I'm not going to name it was under a hedge fund type ownership. It's now in your control. You got to meet the bottom line within a year. What would you do? You're now the publisher. You're now the boss. You've got what is the first thing you would say to the team if you were in charge of that entity right now?
I think the first thing I'd do is I would actually look at my market. I would segment my market by age group, but I'd also segment it by preference and how they like to read the media, see the media, get the information. And I'd push really hard on balanced, factual, undeniably factual, unbiased, yes, politically unbiased editorial. Get editorial back on the editorial page, which is where it belongs. And then I would promote really hard with the technology, the color, and I would if I don't have a direct mail organization, I'd collaborate with one. I would talk to the workflow companies and digital electronic companies to give me the ability to make my product more personalized. Even if it's not individually personalized, you can make it more personalized all the way down to the carrier route code, right?
Exactly.
Because the carriers are taking it there. So I would really look at how to customize my product for my community. And that's true of even the larger papers. They don't have to be nothing but national. There are ways to customize these zoned sections. Yeah, it's an 1.5 to 2 hour drive from print site to delivery, but it can still be done and done timely with great information that the local market is so hungry for.
I've interviewed on this very platform a number of young, innovative publishers that agree 100% with you, the first thing they do is work on the content. I mean, I
Yeah.
know that seems so obvious, but rather than strip that, figure out what message makes me
Right.
relevant to my community, and then look at the distribution and make it as attractive and appealing to the. Doesn't this just seem basic 101 to you? But what's
Yes, it
happening?
does.
But what's happened in this industry must be sad. I mean, I'm not trying to put words in, but it must make you a little sad, right? I mean, to see this baby bathwater thing going on, where they just slash and burn, slash and burn.
When I used to deliver, when I was a kid with my best friend, 7 and 8 pound Sunday newspapers that now weigh less than a half a pound. Yeah, it does make me sad. I mean, my family's been in newspapers one way or another for 50 plus years. To watch what we're doing when we don't have to do it this way does cause me concern. We can surrender, we really can, and I see some doing so. We could choose to surrender, or we could choose to, and I don't know if I want to use the word evolve in particular, but it is much like a metamorphosis, a caterpillar to a butterfly. We have a choice. We can jump in that cocoon, which I think we're in right now. Many are in, some are emerging out, like the Villages and like Southern newspapers and Gannett Events. But the vast majority of the market's still in that cocoon, trying to fight their way out and not knowing what's on the other side. And that's the beauty about innovation and entrepreneurship and development and creation. Nobody knows what's on the other side. It's building it and seeing what works and working with the community and our customers and our advertisers and creating new, constantly recreating new through that innovative, creative process that's going to bring the best out of this industry. I can't wait to see what's on the other side, because I know something's there, Mike, and I know that there's already emerging leaders that are pushing in that direction, and they'll lead the way for the rest.
There's some brands that are doing very well, and you've named a few. I mean, there's no question that when you look at, we had Leonard and his hair, if I may say, Leonard Wilson, on this very platform. I'm actually honored. He has me speaking to his publishing group in a couple of weeks down in Galveston. But yeah, I mean, they're it's kind of the, either go big or go home. You don't give up. You work at it, and then you're comfortable in your space. Okay, so let's play 20. Let's look at the future now. And this is what scares me. If I was a newspaper brand in a medium to big market, and I got constantly slashed and burned, my content is no longer hyper local. I've lost I mean, you talk about great print. There's nothing better than a picture of a local high school football team. Am I right? Or the local church supper, or the local parade. I mean, you got the shooters doing their job. Let's say this has stopped for a year, maybe two. Is the brand dead? Or can the brand be revived? This is where my brain's at lately. I just keep thinking of, because I've got this 144-year-old brand that I'm now stewarding through. Can it be revived? That's my question.
I have every confidence it can be revived, and there's probably 2 or 3 thoughts align with why. The very first thought on why print as a brand is alive is because what we're already seeing with what some of the ones that we've talked about are delivering, and they're delivering real growth year over year in print, real profitable growth in print. So we already have testimony to the fact that innovation does work and is working. I also have confidence in this, and I have to be careful because I don't want to wax as a testimonial or an advertorial, but I'm just going to call it the way it is. When Trip Casson, Chairman and CEO of Southern Lithoplate, and I talked about what do we do with Southern Lithoplate yesterday, I had the grand pleasure of meeting with a guy. His name is Jim Continenza. He's Chairman and CEO of Kodak. And we were talking to him about why should we gift, if you will, Kodak with Southern's legacy. 40 years of really solid business trust, loyal customer base. And Jim made a very clear comment. He said, you look at what some of the other competitors have done, which at the end of this year, 100% of all competitors other than his company, Kodak, will be printing on US soil. Everybody else is left. So when I look at that, and I look at the investment in infrastructure and technology in their manufacturing plan, I look at the type of technologies that they're bringing for printers local, I know for a fact that the hardware, the software, the pre-press work, the editorial work, all the tools that I would need as a publisher is there. I just had to figure out how to get to them. And I believe that that process is being put in place. It's actually already in place. It will be publicly known more clearly over the next couple of months. That's just a straight up truth. I don't work for Kodak. They don't pay me anything. That's what I know is a great tool. Now, the other thing, it's interesting you use the word go big or go home, because when Russ Newton, the former president of International Newspaper Group, I took over for Bill May as program manager about 3 years ago. And I looked at Bill in that meeting, Russ at that meeting. I said, Russ, what's your vision? He said, go big or go home. And we went from a great organization that had tremendous legacy over 20 some odd years. What's cool is that leadership banded together, collaborated with each other. We went from 12 sponsors to 34. We went from a show that was 80 people to 250 plus. And what I see inside that leadership, production and operations business unit of guys coming together, guys and gals coming together and saying, we want to make print viable. The third piece, Mike, is it's not just listening to the leadership of ING, if you will, it's listening to the leadership. And now we have a focal forum, a virtual summit, which you're actually helping us host on October the 13th. We'll go back to live next year. But you're talking about a couple of hundred guys that have decades of experience, each man and or woman, that are coming together and talking about how do we drive print profitability for our print production and or publisher owners. There is a think tank that this country does. I would argue, I'm not even sure the country, as far as publishers and editors, even know exists.
Well, there
on
you
how
go.
to optimize print.
There you go. Now, first of all, we have a large audience on this platform, and some may not know. ING stands for International Newspaper Group. It is a collection of businesses that serve the print industry, not just newspapers. Let's be very clear.
That's exactly right.
All print publishers. And it's far and wide. Some of these companies are huge. They're European based, what have you, everything from the ink to the paper to the technology today. You have some high tech technology to make it as profitable as possible. You've been with that organization for years, and ENP is honored to partner with. But let's all right. So let's get into this right now. We're discussing a world where the word paper is being removed from titles. I mean, let's discuss the first. Newspaper Association of America, News Media Alliance, International Newspaper Marketing Association, International News Media, Suburban Newspapers, Local Media Association, Dean Ridings, and the folks at Inland and SNPA, they call themselves America's Newspapers Loud and Proud. I just keynoted Florida Press, okay? And I was down there and everybody was there. We had 365 in the audience. There's the entire team of the Tampa Bay Times, right? Because it's there, we're in Sarasota. They're just up the street. Owned by Pointer. They are a newspaper, but they only publish print twice a week. But they say they're a newspaper loud and proud. Is this word paper something we should run away from? I mean, I still dial a phone, don't I? And I'm 64, my friend. I used to remember the little rotary thing. So talk to me. Why is that name something we all are getting scared of? Why are people running away from it? Is that the good move, the bad move, or am I just not even? Is it just a non sequitur? Help me out with this.
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting question. There's two thoughts that come to my mind. One is it reminds me of the late artist Prince, formerly known as Prince. I mean, how many different ways did he change his name? And it also reminds me of a Shakespearean comment: a rose is a rose, is a rose is a rose. Newspapers will always be prevalent and or needed. I mean, we've got well in excess of 100 million people that are subscribing to printed products on a daily basis, if not on a weekly basis, and they're subscribing to as much as they can get. And I saw a study a couple of years ago over in Europe that 25 to 30% of every single millennial was picking up a newspaper at least 3 times a week. And so my question is, why are they picking it up? And why are they not picking it up daily? There's something in print that attracts the millennials. We just have to understand it better. We need to slow down enough to understand it.
And I wouldn't be offended, maybe you don't agree with me, that if there was no daily newspaper in the future, I don't know if you have to have a paper every single day to serve a community, but I think a couple days a week or a certain frequency gives that in-depth content that sometimes people sometimes need to slow down and hold on to something and read it. And if it's also on a tablet, so be it. But I think, in my opinion, it's baby bathwater. It's expensive. Stop. Stop. Yeah. No, I mean, we proudly print E&P each month. We have, I will admit now, we have a larger audience digitally we do in print. That doesn't mean the print product does not deserve a wonderful, beautiful presence and is not read and isn't important. So do you? Okay, so let me. What is a newspaper? I mean, I have to publish the data book now, and it used to be weeklies and dailies, but it's even hard to define that anymore. I mean,
that's the truth.
I define a newspaper as a local news organization, as you said, that does credible, well-sourced journalism. Does that make sense?
No, that's at the heart of it. That's where it begins.
Right. And in some cases, you're the archive of the community. You're 140, 150, 160 years old. You are the community. You're the fabric of that community. Just because we're discussing paper versus not paper, I find that just a non sequitur sometimes.
That's the wrong debate. And to add to the word archive, I would add truth teller and advocate, and I'd also add watchdog, because it's those journalists in the newspapers that present most of the contact commitment for the marketplace well before everybody else does, other than community reporting on, the social media, which that's all opinion. That's not truth telling, and that's not fact based, other than a video. And even then, we've seen that a clip of a video does not tell the truth until you really ferret out what happened.
All right, so let's now get into your industry, you, the suppliers, the ING side of this. We've discussed those that are the customers of that industry. The consolidation, you just mentioned it. Kodak picked up SLP, Southern Lithoplate. Yeah. They are the only provider now, correct, in the United States of that product, correct?
Well, be careful. I mean, Kodak picked up not only us, but ECRM, and their commitment is in investments in Columbus, Georgia. They're committed to making sure that North American printers have manufactured product on North American soil. The other two major manufacturers have elected, one in 2018 and one at the end of this year, which was recently announced, that they will no longer manufacture in the U.S. Can they handle the U.S. needs with imported product? Probably. But if I'm a newspaper, and we all know that today's newspaper can't be printed tomorrow, I want a local partner. Beyond a shadow of a doubt. I'm not going to risk getting my products coming across the ocean. I'm just not going to do it.
What are your brethren members of ING saying about the future? Are they complaining? Are they fighting? Are they staying competitive? What is the mood in the organization?
I think it's a mix. I think that the vast majority of them are looking for a voice to drive print forward. And that voice oftentimes is within their own organizations, because they know how to make it more profitable. It may take some capital investment. They know some of the newer technologies that would give the printed side of the product better capabilities to integrate with variable data and or personalized data, inkjet capabilities, color capabilities. And that'll only come when ownership, regardless of it's private or public, stops and listens. So I think the vast majority have a very positive, proactive outlook. There are those that after 40 or 50 years, the war has worn on them. But I don't have anybody on a 22-member board that I have the honor to be a part of. I don't have one single board member that I would call anything less than a champion for print.
Really? So that's them's fighting words, my friends. That's good to hear. There's also a growth, correct me if I'm wrong, with magazine consumption. Is there not?
That is correct.
Why? What is the difference? This is what I find fascinating. Is it just because the magazine doesn't feel the need to have to? Does it just? But why am I seeing and there's still an affinity or a love for people to hold those.
Yeah.
What research are you seeing on that?
Go back to what happened after the first major correction after the 2008, 2009 economic debacle. And all the catalog printers decided they were going to go digital only, and they dropped a lot of catalog business. And then you saw over the past 3 to 4 years in particular, especially towards the holidays, my mailbox literally is 4 to 5 inches a day full of catalogs, because they learned, and the magazine companies are the same way, learning that I need something tactile in my hand. I want the ability to read the pages at my leisure. I want to be able to read the whole article without scrolling down. I want to be able to put it in my briefcase or my pocket. I want to be able to circle it and hand it to my wife or my business partners. There's that tactile capability, the readability of the product, the usability of the product. You could scratch and smell. It's got so many different benefits. And actually, I think it was about 2015, 2016, the publisher of CNET, which is the major evaluator of electronics, came forward and said, we have to have our own printed product because we're the leader in this segment and we don't have enough panache. The way I get, and I'll quote her, the way I get panache is I'm going to have a CNET printed magazine. I'm going to put that in the hands of every one of my subscribers. That's an understanding of print on the other side, right? Digital, looking at print and saying, if I want to really promote my brand, I have to put something tactile in my subscribers' hands.
Well, as someone who has a wife that comes from the shoe industry, my wife used to edit the LL Bean catalog many years ago, and then she went to Cole Haan. If you ever heard of that company, we get tons. I mean, we have so many. You should see how I have to handle that damn recycling bin in our house, because these are some of the most beautiful, artsy, well-written magazines. I mean, there's a lot of thought and a lot of creativity put into some of these amazing catalogs that we get. And I would say that they're fun. There's nothing wrong with leafing through those.
That's right.
So we're both sitting here talking up print. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. We are. I publish a magazine that I still proudly publish, but it's not our only revenue stream.
Right.
I mean, there's many others, but it's still part of the brand. You've already, let me see if I can sum up your thoughts on it. If you had those brands, you're one of those, just like others, saying, go back to basics, figure out, or the words of P.T. Barnum, find out what they want and give it to them, right?
That's exactly right.
Don't get caught in the weeds. Then I got to ask you this question. You are well known in this industry. I put you on that when you've attended most conferences throughout the years. Everybody seems to know your name. We've all read now that there's with Kodak acquisition or merger, whatever you want to call it, with SLP. What's the future for Steve? May I ask you, sir? What's your next venture? Are you staying, or you're not revealing? Because everybody's wants to ask. What are you going to tell us now on this platform?
That's a good question, an interesting question, one that I am still deeply pondering. I promised Trip Cassin's dad and him in 1991, 92 that I would do everything I could to see the family and this business and this industry grow. My time's not over yet, but it's soon. And then I'm looking at my options. As we had talked earlier, I'm a professional certified coach, and I met the family as a consultant. So I'm strongly leaning towards that, because there's an adrenaline rush when you get to work with different companies in different industries and then bring all those ideas together. It's kind of a synergy, to say the least. And then the coaching piece that I'm working on, which is the next level certification, is actually on mental strength.
Wow.
And it's gonna take a lot of mental strength to go through the next 5 to 10 years, from the economy, from the coming out of COVID, to working through what we are inside this industry. And the mental strength, mental fitness, coaching that I'm doing right now, I'm finding incredibly rewarding. Now, that doesn't mean that as I leave Southern Lithoplate and move on to whatever is next, that I won't consider full-time employment. I just haven't even gotten to the point where I've voiced that I'm available, because I will not leave until I've completed 110% of what I promised the Cassin family.
Well, you forgot to mention, since I always look at LinkedIn profiles before I do these interviews, that you're also a certified diver. Is that correct?
Yes, that's true. I just booked my next annual dive trips to Bonaire and the Socorros Islands.
Wow.
And to the Komodo Islands for 22, 23, and 24. That's a joy.
There's so many different facets to people when you start to meet them and talk to them.
Yeah.
Steve, I appreciate, first of all, your passion. And we share that together, as you know. We've worked on a few projects together that have been very fruitful. And again, thank you for also your support of E&P. And we are looking forward to hosting the fall conference for ING. Also, I appreciate your advice to me over the months, because you knew I was a new publisher when I took over E&P. So I kicked off the speech for Florida Press. I said, I finally learned that paper, people, and postage are expensive, after a while. But I think the industry still needs you, sir. If I can speak on behalf of our audience, I hope you keep a foot in this door and you keep pushing us along, because it's not just print versus digital. It's great product versus a mediocre product. Does that make sense? I think we're both in the same place.
We're in total harmony on that. And I don't know what's next, Mike. I can tell you that I feel in my inner spirit that whatever it is, it's going to be a lot of fun.
I bet, especially with you at the helm. Steve, thank you. Stay healthy. We'll be talking, I know, and working together in the months to come. And thanks so much for being part of this.
Thank you, and God bless.